Grapes. Essential to brewing the nation's most consumed beverage, there are over 250 varieties found alone in France. From the sweet taste of Muscats, to the dry palate of Pinot Gris, and the rich reds of Bordeaux. But to achieve the best, all require the right conditions to flourish. Champagne isn't grown in the south, and a Bordeaux red isn't going to blossom anywhere near Paris. This gentle balance of the right growing conditions, the best care, and patience is essential. The same could be said for Counter-Strike. Each player unique in their own flavor, all require their own comfortable climate to pack their best punch. And when you get that mix just right, that is when you get to taste your very own Taittinger. But to reach that requires some experimentation, and no region is more familiar with mixing their flavors than the French. Welcome to Turning Points. When we talk about French Counter-Strike, many people will think of players like ZywOo, teams like Vitality, and moments like this.
Kill coming in, Brawlad steps up, 3 kills to Brawlad, and Zai will eventually drop him on the floor. Enough health to survive here on Brawlad, but ZywOo wants to kill. There's the headshot, pulls it back, there's the ult, but ZywOo's got the triple. Crims is the last man standing, and there's time for the defuse. ZywOo wants to smoke the bomb. If you're Crims, you have to be scared, and ZywOo wins it.
But just like the breadth of their wines, French CS has an expansive history, and alongside some legendary names, was infamously known for its politics.
Most players at top level have ego. I would say it's necessary to be a top player. You have to believe in what you're capable of and believe that you're better than most people. However, ego can cause you problems if you have a clash of egos, if you see yourself as above the other people on your team, or you feel like this is how the jigsaw goes together, but their pieces might not necessarily mesh, then you're going to have problems. Where on paper, for people on the outside looking in, they're like, if only you could get player X and player Y on one team, then surely all the pieces would fall together, but that isn't always the case, which has been a problem in the French scene. Some people want to bring a certain player along with them and won't play without them because they're friends in real life. You know, Counter-Strike is it's work, it's business, right? And you kind of have to put emotions to the side and figure things out. And maybe that's a process which people have had to mature in over time, but in that time there were certainly problems in that respect. Certain people didn't want to play with other people, and if you can compare that to, say, an iBuyPower, for example, you have Steel and Dazed who famously didn't get on and weren't really friends, but they could make it work in the server and play very well together. Whereas the French sides didn't necessarily always get there with some of the rosters that we could have seen in that period of time.
Yeah, I mean, when you come into a scene that is very emotional, and ego definitely play a part of the way, because people want to do things one way or another way. Depends also what ego really is, which I'm not sure by definition, but you know, we all have ideas on how to make a team work and how to make things work one way or another, whether it is tactically or outside of the team. And in that sense, for the French scene, it's often been the downfall of not being willing to give up on opinions and ideas, kind of hurting relationships and therefore ruining teams, basically.
Enter the French shuffles. So let's roll back the clock to February 2015. An org famed for their Call of Duty squad, Team Envy would decide to spread their wings into Counter-Strike. In doing so, they'd acquire the entirety of LDLC's roster: MBK, Shox, Happy, Kirishima, and Smiths.
And yeah, talking to several organizations, several American ones, and we just stood out by what they were offering. It was obviously the main thing because we didn't know them at the time. You know, all of that made it that we just took the decision as a team to go with them. But like it was definitely a step up in a sense that Freya Games was always a French organization, LDLC French organization, and now we were transitioning to something a bit different that was going to be playing for an American org while still staying in Europe. And so yeah, it was pretty different.
Initially, the team would continue with the same strong results prior to the switch up, but as the months passed, things started to slow down. This prompted Envy to get involved in what at the time was known as the French Shuffle.
We knew that if we were to play together again, we would have very high chances of having a good team put together that could really win trophies and do good overall.
But this wasn't the first roster shuffle the region had bore witness to. In fact, the term was coined back in 2014. 3 teams, Titan, Epsilon, and LDLC, would all be poured into the blender.
Coming into that first sort of big French shuffle, it was just a matter of putting some of the pieces back together because, yeah, there were some kind of ups and downs throughout the very games period following the CSGO transition. It was a matter of putting certain pieces together, again, try to do something our way because it was a lot of the time leadership of Existence and NIAC that were like leading the teams with going a certain direction, and so there was a certain will to do things a bit differently.
Amongst their added complications of 2 players also getting back banned, the creme de la creme of the first shuffle was LDLC. They'd go on to be the first French team to lift a major trophy, taking down the defending champions NIP.
He's going to spot MBK first, he goes down, and LDLC, they pick it up. And look at that, they can hardly believe it. They're hugging each other, and it must be an unreal sensation. And the crowd will stand up and recognize LDLC in their performance.
Back to 2015, and the addition of Apex and Kenny S, replacing Smiths and Shocks in EnVy, where the team saw decent results almost immediately.
They need to go big, and Kenny's gonna go ahead and peek in a second, and he gets the flick on his Zipnix, lightning fast!
Just a month after their swap, 2nd place at the Cologne Major, in a final that broke many French CS fans' hearts.
It's through, they can't stop now, Olaf with the kill as well. It's going to be Kenny with a refract grenade on in, Happy's on 6 health. And ladies and gentlemen, it's going to require a miracle and nothing less for Happy to make it out. I don't think there's any chance. Flusher looking to end this. It's going to be a 3rd title for Fnatic. They win a 3rd major championship in global offensive.
Wow, and what a way to finish it.
But they were swiftly repaired as they finally went on to claim their first major title as a team in Cluj-Napoca.
Oh, and a second headshot there. Flamey gonna be gone. Hiroshima, and there it is. Executive down. EnVy winning the last major of 2015 and the 2nd title in a row here for 3 of these players. The first for Kenny and Apex. What a victory.
When we won DreamHack Winter 2014, Fnatic was our nemesis as well, and we played them in quarterfinal because they ended up 2nd in our group. And coming into Cluj, they were not looking as strong as they were, and we were still like in full strength because we really wanted it to get in that major. Like we knew we were so close in Cologne that we really wanted to get it in Cluj then. And again, I think the key is to come into the tournament with a fucking mentality. That you just go in and play, and whatever happens, happens.
But sometimes when you're climbing up the side of a mountain, hauling every ounce of your weight, you claw your way to the summit just to find out that what is waiting on the other side is a sheer drop. EnVyUs would unfortunately topple right over the edge. The team couldn't keep up that consistent form that netted them their major victory, and with that, more heads to the chopping block. The first being Hiroshima.
I don't know, maybe it was just finger pointing, you know? Like, it wasn't fair, and I always believe this, that you win and you lose as a team. I don't care if you're even just playing a game of FACEIT, right? And you're playing with people you don't know. It's not down to one person. You can even look at things where you're an in-game leader and you're not fragging out, but you've had impact elsewhere in what you've been able to do. Putting Kyo as the problem is not a fair way of doing it. Something was going wrong outside of the game that would make that a problem, and then it just became a blame game because I'm trying to save myself, you know, and that I think is completely the wrong mentality.
So what happened with Kyo was not linked to him as a player or his playstyle or even the difference. It's just he wouldn't agree with how we were playing and wasn't feeling happy just playing the game, as simple as that. Even, you know, like I still remember I think evening where I went to him and I told him, look, like I need to do this, but like, you know, get your shit together because we can't continue like this if you're not motivated and don't want to practice. And if it doesn't get better in like a month or 2, you know, we're going to be obliged to make a change, you know. So try to find a way to get motivated again, to get back into it, because you know, you're part of the team and we need you to do good, right?
While the team would struggle to find a suitable 5th, 2016 saw the dawn of the Brazilian era.
Okay, tags up. 1. He's gonna get... Oh! I'm starting to believe as well, Henry, because he's gone and taken Flamey. Oh, Fallen! Stop blowing my mind!
Alongside some solid results from the likes of Na'Vi and Fnatic.
Come back to bite them. They are censoring it though, and they're going to be nading off, and JW of course lands the first shot. They're going to be fully aware. Make it a double.
But one other organisation was tentatively waiting to create the next French super team. Gamers 2 rebrand as G2 and take a new outlook on their roster after their former side is scooped up by FaZe Clan. In turn, they net the former Titan squad: Shox, RPK, Existence, Scream, and Smiths.
There was so much hype around that G2 roster. It was like, oh, this is gonna do it. Like, we're gonna, I don't know, glue it all back together and make it work. It was a nice ideal, and it was something as a Counter-Strike fan you could get excited about and enjoy. But again, more changes, more inability to be able to put together the right players. Look at how much they had to change things up. And the great thing, at least from the G2 organization side, is they're a team that can make more cutthroat decisions. You know, they are led by some serious experts, and you can only get away with that kind of an attitude from the past for so long. But I remember being very excited for it, and then obviously it never really hit the high heights of what we wanted.
After lifting the trophy at ECS Season 1, the squad would peak at number 2 in the world rankings, but slowly drop off and find themselves just hanging inside the top 10 by the end of the year.
À ça, juste soyez directement dans la game, go crier, go s'enflammer, ok, comme hier, la même rage. Et les gars, s'il y a un pote qui se tape, tout de suite on va l'aider, ok, faut que ça soit énergétique. Il y a un mouvement sur une zone, tout de suite on fait un truc, on va aider un pote, ça flash, ça smoke, ça si, ça, ok, ça bouge, il y a de la vie, on joue à CS, on joue ensemble, on joue en teamplay. S'il y a un pote qui se tape, on va l'aider et nique sa mère. Si le mec en face il fait 3 kills, il fait une action vidéo, il ferait une action vidéo, on s'en bat les couilles. Mais c'est comme à la guerre, ok, on est entre nous, on est dans la même merde, on est les 5 doigts d'une main et il faut qu'on le ressente in game, ok les gars?
For many, the real highlight of G2 came in February of 2017, when Shox and Kenny S would finally be united under the same banner.
Kenny, right, literally one of the guys that was breaking the game, looking like things were possible that was impossible. Shox, Mr. Tap away, super precise. Like for me, I always would describe Shox as razor sharp, you know? Great mind for the game, but an incredible rifle at all times. And could also just put out the AWP, you know, they wanted to run a double AWP setup. Obviously not something that was happening very often, but it's like, he just had the ability that he could pull things off. And you were looking at potentially trying to have like a prime Kenny and a prime Shox together.
The superstars, I guess, with more visibility and all of that stuff were probably Shox and Kenny. At the time, me, I've always been more in the background, being a more supportive player, being nicknamed the Kingmaker by Thorin, because I'm more in the background and I just put the right pieces together and try to make it work. But in terms of like players being more flashy and more imposing on a server and all that kind of stuff, yeah, Kenny and Shox never played together up to that point, and so there was the opportunity to make that work. That mix of players and how it was going to be together to have that group together.
So Shox and Kenny S, a duo that people wanted to see for a very, very long time, but you always had Shox and Smiths, of course, who, things like Dust 2 mid doors before the AWP nerf, he was very effective at the crouch peaks and so on, but of course Kenny S is in a different league altogether, but Shox always wanted to play with Smiths because they were very close friends in real life, so we didn't get to see Kenny S and Shox for the longest time. I think from G2's point of view, putting a new team together, you need big personalities for people to get behind, and they definitely had a great set of personalities and player profiles to garner support for that team.
At the same time as this highly anticipated move, MBK and Apex would also don the jersey. And once again, a peak towards the middle of the year, reaching number 2 in September of 2017.
In the end, the super team didn't end up winning as much as we wanted to. The French kicked into us again, disagree and make certain changes and all of that. And I think at the end of the first year, there was a lot of misunderstanding and miscommunication in terms of how we wanted to move the team together. And because of that, there were rifts that were being created between players that were quite important. You know, like some things were being said on one side to me and the management, and another thing with Shox and the management and all that kind of stuff. And therefore, there was no proper communication or, you know, understanding on how things were going to be and what direction we were going to take, etc. At some point, Shox had a hand surgery that he had to go under, and he was going to be out for I think 2 months. Then I wanted to take the responsibility of leading the team, and in the end when Shox came back, G2 decided to just follow Shox's direction and basically just used me for the 2 months to like, at least we have someone, at least we do something. And I think the plan was pretty clear that as soon as Shox was going to be back, he's going to be leading the group and, you know, making his thing in his direction.
The flag of G2 wouldn't solely change from the tricolour until late 2019, and even then, it was only Nexa and Hunter adding some spice from Crazy.
On 3,
Smoke down towards Xbox, makes things a bit more problematic for Nexus. So does the flashbang. He needs at least 2 kills out of a chance in the round. There's the first, not bad at all. There's the second, it's working out, Eric! Let's go, Nexa!
The most highly anticipated move came from signing Nico at the tail end of 2020, officially ending the French majority rule within the roster. That brings us to present day, and up until a few months ago, Vitality were the ones to be flying the French flag.
They might be able to get another nice shot, and then suddenly there's problems for Vitality. The flashbang, oh, and the swing is beautiful, but somehow Apex, he's so far from the flash, he doesn't get fully blinded, and he's able to tap them down.
ZywOo, no health really, but he's still hitting shots. He's already got 3 and 4 and 5 and oh my god, ZywOo!
To his name as Fnatic look to try and push into ramp. Masuta with 3, 4, 1 taps in a row. He's on for the ace, and he'd love to see him pick it off, and he has.
But all that changed with one of the biggest signings of the new season. Shox, Kyojin and Xtaz out in favor of Magisk, Dupree and Zonic.
The most recent Vitality change is pretty exciting because, again, I think historically, going back to the Virtus Pro days, I feel like that was a learning period for everybody where they'd replace one player. And it was the same with a lot of replacements we saw with FaZe Clan as well. To look a bit more recently, you would have one player consistently get rolled out, another player get rolled in, but you have everybody who's comfortable in their roles and so on. They don't want to change, they don't want to learn anything new, so they're just like, all right, you come in and do the roles he was doing. So the team doesn't change. It's just like someone else is picking up the broom and sweeping the same place, basically.
I understand the approach of Vitality as a whole, like as an organization, to go international so that it gives them a bigger pool, like for the future, for let's say like in 10 years. It's going to give them more chances to create whatever they want to do in Counter-Strike with different players and to have, just like simply a bigger pool. And so preparing players like ZywOo, for example, that is going to be a franchise name for I don't know how many years, also get into that. So I think the goal there is not to be efficient year one, which they're screaming on every roof that's what they want to be, but I think from a business perspective it makes more sense to look at it like a progression thing for like the next 10 years to figure out how international rosters can work and all of that. I think it makes sense. I think it's unfortunate because the group that they had a synergy together that I haven't seen in like a lot of French teams, especially being successful. I think it was kind of a shame to have that removed because I don't think they were at the end of their road together. Like maybe with one change they could have created and have another spark at something. But yeah, that was the decision of Vitality. Yeah, they obviously didn't have the best first showing, but it's kind of to be expected. It's their first international team for all the actors in this group. And so it's a learning process. I understand the decision, where they're coming from, why they did it, and we'll see what happens if they can manage to make it work.
Out of all the top teams I see that made changes to try and be the number one in the world for 2022, they are the one that needs the most time, but they also, in my opinion, have the highest peak potential because they have 2 legendary Danish players, 3 very skilled, and obviously ZywOo being the second best player in the world, and Masuta coming into his peak. But okay, the results at the start of this year are not so great. But look at this. French scene was notoriously not very English speaking. They are now having to communicate in English. You cannot expect that to be like, for me, communication in your native language is the key to success in Counter-Strike. I'm not so much a big fan of international teams. That's not to say they can't have success. They definitely can. But they need more time, culturally and communication-wise.
And that begs the question, what is the future for regional rosters? Many teams over the years have attempted to blend international squads, each to varying degrees of success. But now we're entering an era where teams understand what goes into mixing cultures. Will 2022 be the turning point for international dominance?